Good evening and welcome to my channel. My name is Jane Sanders and I am here to give some advice to caravan owners around the UK who are now facing their worst fears. Not only is the country in lockdown as of 8:30 this evening, but they are facing the awful possibility that the holiday parks, pursuant to government guidance, may actually shut the holiday parks, which could mean for those of you that have actually bought a caravan to live on site, perfectly within the ambit of the law as it stands, and I'll explain momentarily, you could face the very real possibility that your holiday park, relying on the government measures in place, justify themselves in asking you to leave and go to your main home. I am here to say unequivocally that that is not going to happen. Why not? First and foremost, let's discuss what living on site actually means. Briefly, and to bring anybody who's new to the page up to speed, you've got a situation where caravans are, by and large, according to the research that I've gathered over the last 18 months, missold. And they're missold on any number of bases. It may be on a financial basis, it may be on the basis that you can live on site, when in actual fact a licensing period may be for 50 weeks of a 52-week year, and a person has to be somewhere else for 2 weeks of the year. That gives loose compliance. In actual fact, for the purposes of other pieces of legislation, then it's questionable as to whether that should be allowed at all, predominantly because in order to live on site, you still must have a verifiable other residence. That particular issue has been driven home time and time and time again by scores of consumers around this country on various pages on Facebook and other social media platforms, where it's come to light that in actual fact there is no remedy for them when they have an issue, and the legislation as it applies to our colleagues who live in, who have the luxury, shall we say, of living in under bricks and mortar, these rights and remedies that they have are denied to members of our community who live on site at a holiday park. I am not here to distinguish between those who bought to holiday and those who bought to live on site, predominantly because I've probably assessed upwards of 500 cases, just briefly, just touching on them, and they all had a relatively common theme. If they were not bought as a second holiday residence, they were actually bought to live on. And the main thrust of the arguments that came to me through reading the data that I was given is that effectively those people were told that it was okay to live on site. It was okay if you didn't have a main residence. It was okay and you could live on site, and they could assist you, they being the holiday parks, with selling your home. And this was okay because the loophole was that you needed a PO box address that stands as an alternative residence, for which you can use that PO box to receive your post. Because one of the quirks of that legislation is you must not receive post to a holiday park. There are legal loopholes all over the country and people use them to great effect. This is one legal loophole that has not been used to great legal effect, for the simple reason that holiday parks are in effect sites around the UK that are often beautiful, absolutely stunning, and they represent the very best that the UK has to give holidaymakers, but with one stark difference. Unlike a site that has a residential permit, those sites are given a 50-week license, for example, because they are not fit to sustain human habitation permanently, because it, for instance, it might not have access to the services that is needed. It may not have access to hospitals. It may not have access to gas and electric that a home, a main home, would need to have. Accordingly, when they grant the licenses, effectively the housing authority will say, yes, okay, we can give you a license for 50 weeks of the year, and you can basically cram in as many pitches as you can within the terms of the law, and you can rent those pitches out. Because predominantly, unless you're buying a lodge, you buy a caravan and then you rent your pitch. Now, why is that relevant for lockdown? It's relevant for lockdown because prior to the lockdown tonight, the guidance was that if you came in contact with somebody and you began showing symptoms, you had to lock down. The number of messages that I've received from frantically worried people that are effectively living on site within the terms of the license is that they are fearful that if they self-isolate according to government guidelines, they are going to be found in breach of the site license. That site license is the power tool, shall we say, by which control is exerted over every member of the public that uses a rented pitch, whether that caravan is owned outright or whether that caravan is subject to finance. The common denominator is that the holiday parks have, until recently, held absolute, unequivocal and rigid control over holiday makers and people that reside in those caravans 24/7 for 50 weeks of a 52-week period, and they have ruled them with an iron fist. What that has actually meant is that there have been circulations made by email and some by other means, whether it be at the reception office, where holiday owners or caravan owners have been asked to come in and collect a document which is warning them that if the holiday park finds that they have self-isolated on site, they will be asked to leave and go to their main residence. Ladies and gentlemen, that specific sentence represents a ticking time bomb for the members of UK public that have actually had the bad experience of purchasing a caravan for any purpose. Because in actual fact, that legal loophole that has been exploited and or relied upon in order to garner as many sales as possible, and not just original sales but upgrades and so on and so forth, that actually means that we have a situation now where the caravans are in very close confines. More often than not, there's generally a major entrance. Bearing in mind that the conditions on site, Marley Park down at Marley is a perfect example that it's a floodplain. Plus we're in spring, but early spring, so we're still bearing the effect of a particularly harsh winter, even though we've had no snow. And we've got COVID-19. COVID-19 has now got two strains. The effect of those two strains is that it's gone from animal to animal to human, and human to human. Before tonight, I would have said that a lockdown coming would have stopped what was going to happen. However, if you factor in 225,000 owners, and I say this loosely based on information that I had handed to me probably 18 months ago, if a proportion of those, even 50% of those, face a real risk of being asked to leave their home, what is going to happen? I had a conversation with a lady who's absolutely terrified. She's a key worker. I can't name names for fear of reprisals, and she is at her wit's end because there is a page at the moment that is putting up the risks and the loopholes and that people need to stay at home. She can't stay at home. She is a key worker. That means that the UK is reliant on her skill set and the skill set of others who are key workers to keep going to work. That means she is exposed to COVID-19 on a daily basis. She has no choice over that matter, and the only thing that she can do if she becomes susceptible to this virus is self-isolate. And if she does that, what is she likely to face? According to some of the pages and according to some of the information that is being circulated by the holiday parks themselves, they could face expulsion from a caravan that either they own outright or is on finance. Now, let's look at the measures of austerity in place in the UK for homeowners at the moment. If you own your home, you're automatically given a status that far exceeds those of the caravan owners in the UK, whether you live on site or you bought a caravan as a second property. You will get a 3-month mortgage break if COVID-19 affects your income and your way of life. Look at renters. By this I mean individuals that are renting property that is bricks and mortar subject to a tenancy agreement. Following further measures of austerity put in place by our government, irrespective of your position on our government and your political allegiance, there is now measures in place that give a fairly decent level of comfort to those that are renting. On top of that, HMRC has now come back in and said that for those individuals who are actually self-employed, HMRC will assist with repaying them certain amounts of money. Of course, this is all embryonic at the moment, but these pieces of legislation that are becoming enacted at the moment are being rushed through in order to offer protections to those classes of individuals that have been affected. On top of that, we've got the business owners. Now, the business owners are considered predominantly as able to withstand these risks. That the business owners will still get the mortgage breaks for 3 months, but those that have fixed incomes or have incomes on a fixed term contract will have certain measures in place if they succumb to COVID-19, meaning that they can claim up to a certain amount of money with specific caps in place. Now, if we look at that reasonably, we've just covered off the self-employed workforce, we've covered off the fixed income workforce, we've covered off homeowners, we've covered off, who else have we covered off? Renters. Who have we not covered off? We haven't said anything about a whole body of people, and I'm willing to bet money that there are way more than 225,000 people in the UK that help bolster multiple billion pound industries in this country. And why? Because the UK is absolutely beautiful. But the stark fact is, at this precise moment in time, irrespective of the fact that there was a debate heard and questions posed, there is no resolution in place for these caravan owners that are currently living on site. Holiday makers, of course, are told to stay at home, and the holiday parks thus far have only dared to say that they are closing the rental market for anybody that wants to come and reside on a holiday basis in any of the UK parks. What I believe will come next is what has already been mooted in earlier days, that if you are found self-isolating in a caravan, you could be asked to leave. And I am here to say right here, right now, that any holiday park that does that, you come straight to me. We've got a direct feed to a number of members of Parliament who are not waiting to have to debate this in Parliament, but are ready and willing to listen to what is going on. And why would I be doing that? Because think about this. There are any number of pages where you good folk are resident, shall we say. You talk to one another. There are pages that are escalating the parliamentarian route. That has come to a grinding halt as a direct result of the lockdown today. By that, I mean that whilst the lobbying continues in earnest, the petitions that are parliamentary in nature are by analogy going to have to stop, because the country is facing not just the interests of the caravan owners, but of a workforce and an economy that sustains the whole of the UK. That's not to say that those issues are more important than any of you. What I'm saying is you are underrepresented. And if you will allow me, I would like to give you a voice, and a voice that is being put in an open forum, not on a closed page. And I hope that instead of the diatribe of nonsense that ordinarily comes out of these things, that instead of talking about a tea cozy hat or avoiding COVID-19, that people actually engage with this process. You've got one opportunity now to stop the holiday parks actually stepping up and saying, right, we've got legitimate grounds to ask you to leave. They do not have legitimate grounds, and I'll tell you why. The government is in lockdown. The ethos, the whole underlying epithet that is being said at the moment is, please stay at home. If your caravan is your home, your Prime Minister has told you to stay at home. As far as I'm concerned, the law that applies to rentals should and will apply to every caravan owner or finance purchase that rents a piece of land from the holiday parks. You should benefit from the exact same rights and remedies that your brethren that are renting bricks and mortars should get, because you are renting. You are renting a piece of land. If anybody tries to oust you from that pitch, whether or not you've paid your pitch fees or not, they are putting you in direct jeopardy of spreading a virus that is taking thousands and thousands of lives. Any park that takes those steps will be acting on the basis that a specialist lawyer, unregistered barrister and claims management company, Jane Sanders of JSCS, has just stated in public on a public forum that they should be willing to take responsibility for the deaths and the negligence claims that ensue flowing from all losses that they cause by unlawfully evicting you from those caravans. That's by no means a remedy to any of you, but it will make them sit up and think. And the only way that this will stand in your favour is if you utilise this. Subscribe to the page. We will be doing this on a daily basis. We've got a little page, and the reason that we've got a little page and not a massive one where Carol Keeble was involved at the helm is because we were all evicted. From the mighty has come a tiny, flickering little group of people. It's a tiny little candle. There is a tiny group of people on the Legal Beagle page that are working frantically behind the scenes to evaluate and take steps to block the actions, the illegitimate, unconstitutional, unlawful actions of any holiday park, any corporation that stands to undermine your rights in this country amidst a global pandemic and a lockdown in Britain. If you are at risk, please get in touch. We will put the links on the page and for the page at the bottom of this YouTube video, and I urge you all, get talking. You've got one opportunity now. The media are not listening to you. You are not important, but to all of us, you are number one priority. You have rights. This forum is here to ensure that you know what they are, and that in these extremely distressing times, you are protecting your lives and your livelihood and mitigating the risk of a spread of a disease that kills as it sees fit. So help me help you. Subscribe, put this out there everywhere, and get the petition signed and created by Keith Whitehouse out there in the ether, and get it signed, because that information is going direct, not up the parliamentary route, but to a group of members of parliament whose instincts are that this may actually be something of such gravity, i.e. the interests and the undermining of your rights, that they have to take note. Be warned, ladies and gentlemen, this group of caravanners is not going to go quietly into the night. Stand up and be counted now before it's too late. Thank you.